State your full name.
John T. Coates III.
And do you mind telling your date of birth?
Certainly not. June 6, 1934.
And where you were born?
The old Patton Memorial Hospital in Hendersonville.
And your current residence?
Street address 8585 Spartanburg Highway, Saluda.
And tell us your spouse's name.
Joyce.
The parents' name?
John T. Coates Jr. My father, and my mother was Janie M. Matthews Coates.
And you are a native of Saluda?
Yes. The only reason I wasn't born in this town is you didn't have a hospital, and my mother, being a school teacher, didn't think I ought to be born at home, so we went to Hendersonville.
And would you like to tell us a little bit about your parents?
My father came up here from Macon, Georgia, probably about the turn of the century. And my mother was a school teacher, and this was her first teaching job here. And she came here probably in 1918 or 17 and taught 1 year, and that's where she met my father. And then she went back to her home in South Carolina for the summer, and he went down to see her, and we found an old letter written 2 days before they got married. That's where he was going, and he asked a local resident here by the name of Grover Turner, who you probably know or remember, how to get there, because the roads weren't paved, they had just a lot of dirt roads. But he finally got down there, and we found out from that letter that they got married about 2 days later, and then came back here, and she taught here for about 30 years.
And that was where in South Carolina?
Scranton, South Carolina is her home. But she went to Coker College.
What do you remember about some of the old timers about Saluda?
How old? I mean, everybody was older than me when I was growing up here, so.
Some of the people that you remember from your childhood.
Well,
this is the question about the Saluda characters. Do you have any special memories of any of real Saluda?
well, the oldest one I can ever remember meeting was had the century-old fire.
Billy Morris.
Will Morris, they called him. My dad took me down to see him at his old log cabin. And the fire, I didn't know what it's all about, but I remember the fire was still going at that time, and I was about 4 or 5 years old. That's the oldest fella I can ever remember here.
What did he take you there for?
My dad went down to see him about something. I don't know what.
What did you think when you?
Well, I was only 4. I don't know.
But you have a memory of it.
Oh yeah, I remember going in the first log cabin I think I'd ever been in, and he had a dog.
Did you ever go back to see him?
He died not too long after that.
He died in the 40s.
Yeah.
Early 40s.
Yeah.
And I guess being a child, you didn't realize the importance of keeping a fire like he did.
No, it was 100 years old when I saw it. So.
You remember an older police chief?
Gurley Lauder is the first one I can remember. I think he was the chief before I was ever born.
And there for years and years.
Yeah, forever.
Where did Gurley Lauder live? Do you remember?
Yeah, he lived out there where your grandparents bought.
Oh, on the
That was his house. Matter of fact, he sold it to Raymond.
So the Stephensons bought it from Gurley?
Right.
Okay, I wondered about that.
Well, there was a Mr. White that owned it between times.
Okay. For clarification, you go by Jack, is that
Yeah,
correct?
correct.
Can you remember, I'm sure you do, about the trains that came through?
Oh, yes, I remember when you heard one coming, you went inside if you were a local, because you got soot all over you if you didn't. But the tourists all gathered on the street looking, and they didn't know about all that soot. So the locals, they just vanished when train would come, but not the tourists. They stand out there and get covered with that stuff.
And the mail came up on the trains, what, four times a day?
Yeah, and Charlie Ward used to go pick it up in a little
Take it to the-
A-model pickup truck down there and pick it up.
What would you do with it?
Take it to the post office, and the Edgertons would sort it and put
So
it up.
that's when, his name was William or Bill Edgerton?
Bill Edgerton.
Postmaster.
Right. And then when he was in service, his wife took over as postmistress.
Okay, and her name was it Vernon?
I always called her, yeah,
What-
Mrs. Edgerton, but
Vernon Thompson.
Vernon, Vernon,
So she was a Thompson.
yes.
Okay. And her sister was Louise
Louise Staten,
Thompson Staten then.
and her other sister was Myrtle Phillips.
Oh, okay.
And,
So, did you ride the train, Edie?
oh, yes, we used to ride it a lot. What we did, we would go up on Saturday from here to Hendersonville to watch the movies. And the fare was 10 cents on the train. And they went up to 15 cents one time, and we all quit and started riding the bus because that was like a nickel cheaper. But we'd ride the train up there and back. And I remember Dick Williams was what they called a conductor. He actually sold candy, had a thing around his neck with like you see these people walking around sell. That's what he did on the train, sold candy. It was a long time ago.
I've never heard anybody say that about Dick Williams or that there was anyone that did that. So that's
That's before he ever went in service. He was in the Navy after that, but before he ever went in, he worked for the railroad.
Now, I've heard stories about when you all were kids, that if the train blocked the road out here, you used to go under it.
You go under it or over it. It's easier to go under it. You never did know when it was going to move.
Did you ever go over it?
Yeah, through it.
Oh, go
Not up on top and down, but through it. It's easier to go under it. But we used to also put pennies, or I didn't want to waste a nickel or a dime, but put pennies on the track and see how flat they'd get
Put a
when
penny on it and let it flatten it out.
and flatten it out. I still got some of those pennies.
Do you think the train's going to come back?
I don't think so. I talked to them before about it, and they said it was way too expensive for the insurance coming up the mountain. And then they have a problem too. They wanted to convert it into a walking trail, but the railroad doesn't really own the property. They just have right of way, and that leaves a lot of property owners liable for somebody's walking along and get injured and suing them. So I don't know if it'll ever be a walking trail either.
Were you ever one of those boys that hooked a ride on the train down the mountain?
I used to ride it up the mountain, never did ride it down, because coming up the mountain, it was just barely moving. You could just walk and catch it. We used to do that, yeah. If they didn't see you, you had to get it on the back. If you got on the side, they could see you from the cab. They'd look back around the curve and they'd come down and get you off of it. But if it's on the back end on the caboose, they couldn't see you back there.
You ever see any hobos?
No,
No.
just us kids.
Y'all were the hobos, huh?
Yeah.
And they always had to stop on the top of the mountain and set the brakes.
All the trains stopped coming and going to set them on the way down and to release them on the way up. Every train stopped in Saluda.
And I've heard a tale that the depot was right where the playground is now, right in front of it. And that when the train stopped at the depot, the end of it would be hanging over the mountain. And that's why they moved the depot on down the tracks.
Probably right. That was before my time.
Yeah, before my time too. Okay, what's your first memory of going downtown?
I remember some of the buildings, it looked a lot like some of these. I mean, there's old wooden fronts, you know, paint falling off, and there's a couple of gaps where there weren't any buildings. I remember that. And also remember a lot of horse and wagons down here too, back in early days. You don't see that anymore, but you did then.
Now, where did you grow up? What street did you live on?
Originally, we lived out at the orchard out here where, I don't know who owns it now, but it's
Overbrook?
above the truck stop, Overbrook there. And then moved back here with my grandmother where my sister Martha lives now in that house. And was there for 3 or 4 years, and then moved over to the little house right up here that the Talbots bought and just recently renovated. Actually tore it down and built another one.
And that's named Coach Street for your
Coach
family.
Street, yeah.
Are you talking about the,
It's right beside your grandparents' house.
okay, the Victorian? You talking about the big Victorian house? No?
There's a little house between the two houses.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about.
And that one was torn down a couple of years ago and rebuilt.
Oh, your house sat between the Victorian and my grandparents' house?
Right.
Okay, all right, I didn't realize exactly where your house sat.
My grandfather had all those houses built, and your
Great-grandfather?
Kathleen's father, I guess has to be your great, he was a builder of all those houses.
O.B. Guerin, right?
O.B. Guerin.
And so, you think he built most of the houses on that?
He built all those.
Did he build Beverly Pickard's house, do you think?
He built the one that your grandparents lived in.
Okay.
He built a little, what they called a cottage where we live.
Uh-huh.
And the one we call the greenhouse is where the Talbots have
big
now.
Victorian.
And there was another house to the left of it, which I don't think he had a name, but he had that whole hill.
So you're saying O.B. Guerin built all the houses on Cope Street?
Yeah.
What about up Gaffney?
I don't know. I remember him, but I must have been 6 or 7 or maybe 8 when he died. But I remember him.
How do you know he built those houses?
Because I just know that.
Because you were told that when you were growing up?
Yeah, and he built most of the houses around here, a lot of them, and he built all those.
Especially on that side of town, Peterson Street side, he built. Because
Yep.
is this your impression that, and this is something that we're trying to clarify in some of our work, Ransom Woodruff Pace owned a lot of that land, so he probably was in business with his son-in-law to build those homes, because I know a lot of the land was deeded over to O.B. Guerin and Maggie Guerin, and then O.B. built houses on it. So I'm assuming that he got a lot of his land from his father-in-law.
O.B. came here as a photographer, which is what he did. But it wasn't, I don't guess you could make a living back in those days doing that. So I guess he took up building and did that.
And your grandmother ran a boarding house on
Yes.
Coach Street.
Not Coach Street,
It-
where my sister lives, Crystal Springs.
And you think O.B. Guerin built that house?
I don't know who built
You don't
that
know
one.
that, okay.
I'm not sure about that house.
Well, that's a good lead-in about Crystal Springs, because it had the first plumbing.
Second plumbing. The first plumbing was a hotel across the street, which is long gone now, but it was across up on that hill.
Melrose.
Melrose.
Yeah, and that my sister had a picture of it. It's the first time I'd ever seen a picture of that thing. I don't know where she got it, but she had it. And that was the first indoor plumbing in town. And the water came from Crystal Springs over there. And my great-grandfather came up here when the trains started running and stayed there and liked the town and liked
Stayed at
that hotel, whatever the name of it was.
Okay.
And he bought all that property where my
in his name, he was Estes?
Estes,
What was his full name, you remember?
Charles Estes. I was in college before I knew Charles Street up here, where it goes up by the Methodist Episcopal Church, was named after him. He had a hotel there on the corner.
So Charles Street's named after your
Yeah, I didn't know that because when I was a kid,
great-grandfather?
Charles Estes.
Charles Estes.
And the
Charles Street.
hotel was right on the corner.
Yeah, Charles Hotel was right on the corner, and it caught on fire, and wasn't any city water much, no pressure, so they couldn't put it out. So they took the chairs off the porch and took it down on the sidewalk and rocked it away and watched it burn down. But the old foundation was there when I grew up here. The old foundation was still there, and Bill Pace bought the property. I don't know who owned it after it burned. We didn't. But Bill Pace wound up with it, and he built the house that's on there now.
So Charles Street, the Charles Hotel was also named after your great?
It was his. It was his.
It was his.
It was his.
Okay.
He owned a bunch of property around here.
And your sister told me that Gaffney Street used to be called Estes Hill. Because on the census, when my father lived on Gaffney, the census had Estes Hill.
They called that Breezy Point up there, the whole thing. But I never, Breezy Point, but I never did see it in print anywhere. But that's just.
There was a school up there named Breeze Point.
What was it? That was before my time.
And there were private schools.
There was another hotel up there too, behind that first house that's there now, on that side of it.
Are you now on Gaffney, or where are you at?
It wasn't.
No, out here on this end.
It was on. It was actually it was on this Depot Street or whatever.
Right here?
Right here.
Okay.
It was down near the end of it, and I guess you turned up that street that's there now, by that mobile home,
Yeah.
and you go up there and it's up on the right, up there in that corner. But it burned down. It was a brick house, a brick hotel, and
What was the name of it?
because we used to haul old brick out of that thing. My mother made flower beds with the brick that came out of that thing.
Do you remember the name of the inn?
That's before my time.
Okay. And that was on Andrews Street?
Whatever the name of that street is,
Yeah, that's Andrews.
by the old depot.
There was Gaffney.
We know that there were a lot of different kinds of ways that you made your own fun and passed your time. And one of them was going to the square dances.
Oh yeah, that was the only thing to do here. We used to go to 5 of them a week. They had one here in Saluda. Was it Friday or Saturday night? I think it's whichever.
Friday night.
Friday night here. And Saturday night was in Hendersonville at the some place up there. And then they had the street dances on Monday. And we'd even go down to Lake Lure during the middle of the week. They had one down there too. So you had about 4 or 5 every week we go to.
So you had to learn to dance, didn't you?
You sort of knew how. I don't remember much learning. Everybody seemed to know how.
It just come naturally. Did you ever go to the children's square dances in the pavilion?
Yes, but they also had them under the library too when I was a kid.
I've heard that.
Who owned the building when they were having the square dances at the library? Whose building was that?
It belonged to the church. Episcopal Church owned it. I believe it was their library, wasn't it? Their
And
Their books,
they
their
had
everything.
plates and things down in
yeah.
bottom part because there was a stage there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of music is your favorite music?
Well, I grew up when I was small. The big band sounds of the 40s, some in the 50s. But I was way before rock and roll.
And of course, you probably enjoyed the square dance music.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Do you think that because, or maybe just on its own, Saluda maybe because of the railroad and the summer people and the different types of people that came through town, do you think Saluda was did you feel it was a cultured environment when you were growing up? I mean, you were exposed to a lot of diversity from the different people that came from different parts of the country, or?
Well, I didn't know what culture was when I was a kid. You just grew up and mostly played or get a little older and went to square dances.
Even a lot of the young boys worked for the summer people. Did you do that?
What I did do in the summer was wash dishes for Basden's boarding house up here.
So you had your own family
Three
job.
meals a day, all summer long.
Tell us about your school life.
Of course, all my schooling was over here from the first grade all the way through the 12th. And I passed all the grades. My mother taught me in the 3rd grade, and when I was about in the 8th or 9th, my sister had just finished college, and she was coming back here to teach. And she was supposed to teach the grade I was going into, but 2 weeks before school started, they moved her down to about the 5th grade, which is about the greatest news I ever had the time I was in school.
Who were some of the teachers you remember?
Dolly Hall was the 1st grade teacher, and Kathleen Stevenson was the 2nd grade. My mother was the 3rd grade. Ruth Edwards was in the 4th. No, she was in the 5th. The 4th was, I can't remember her name. She died. I don't remember her name at all. I would if I heard it, but I don't remember what it is now.
There was a Miss Smith that came later.
Yeah. Yeah, she wasn't there when I was there. Mary Basden taught the 7th. The 6th grade, we had 5 or 6 different teachers that year. None of them stayed very long. I don't know what was wrong that year, but they just never had too many. But Mary Basden taught the 7th and the 8th, and in high school, Miss Pace taught the 8th grade, and then the Atkins family, Mrs. Atkins and Mr. Atkins taught in high school.
How many were in your graduating class?
I think there was about 19.
19?
And there's only, as far as I know, there's only 3 of us males still alive out of that class. And I don't know what happened to all the rest of them. They just died. They weren't killed in a war or anything. They just died, and I was a year older than any of them. So I don't know why I'm still here and they're all gone.
What year did you graduate?
High school, 53.
53?
And then you went off to college?
But yes, went to Wake Forest in 53.
And tell us a little bit about your life's work.
Well, when I really wanted to go to NC State because I wanted to be an engineer, and then I found out, I thought, well, they said you had to have a foreign language to get in. So I found out Wake Forest didn't require a foreign language for the business school. So I said, hello business, goodbye engineer. So I went to Wake Forest, and after my first year, I found out State, you didn't have to have it to get in, you had to take it as a makeup to get out. But I'd already had a year, so I thought I'll just stay where I am. So I did, majored in business, because I wanted to do something for myself, and rather than work for somebody or some firm, which I did work for some firm for about 3 years and decided I'd do better for myself. So I did, and got into the insurance.
Where did you meet your wife?
When I was at, our school moved from Old Wake Forest to Winston-Salem my senior year, and my wife's a nurse, and we'd go over to the nursing school, which was Baptist Hospital. They had a big cafeteria, and you could eat for 50 cents. So we spent a lot of time over there eating and, of course, talking to the nurses, and that's where I met her. And we got married later.
Where is she from?
Asheboro.
Asheboro?
Asheboro.
Tell us about your family.
My family? We had 2 children, daughter, while I was in service. And we had a son later, 2 years later. And when he was 7 months old, that's when we moved to Hendersonville. It was in 1964, I believe, 63 when we moved. He was 7 months old and lived there 9 years, and then built a home here on property we had in Saluda. Actually in Henderson County, but a mile out the road.
Did you build the lake, or did your
My
father build it?
my sister's husband, Alan Ashley, and his father bought the property and built the lake.
Okay,
Now, when you're saying lake, what lake are you referring to?
at his house.
Are you talking about the one that?
Where the waterfall is. It doesn't have a name. It's on some map as Coates Lake, but I never did name it. That's what the state put on it, because they came out and checked it so many times. I guess they just called it that, so everybody know where to go.
People just call it Coates Lake.
Yeah, I never did call it that, but that's what's on the map. So
Has it got fish in it? Any fish?
I put a lot of fish in it 2 years ago, about $400 worth of little fish. And we had 2 otters living in there all winter, and I thought they'd eaten all the fish, but there is fish in there now, but they're little ones. They're not really big.
It's a pretty lake.
And you was in service.
U.S. Navy, 1959, 1960.
Did you get his children's names for the record? Did you ask? What are your kids' names? I don't know if you said them.
Daughter is named Lee Coates, and my son was named after me, John T. Coates IV. But he got killed in Hawaii when he was 24 years old. He just finished NC State as an engineer the year before that, and went over there to work and got killed over there. Matter of fact, he got killed on Coon Dog Day, 7/11/87.
Was it why am I thinking it was a scuba diving?
He was a scuba diver, and he was working underwater
Okay.
with gear on when somebody turned pumps on, and it sucked him up against one of them, and he couldn't get off.
Sorry about that. All right, I remember hearing Daddy talk about that.
You have grandchildren?
My daughter has 2, has a daughter and a son. The daughter just finished her first year at Rutgers. She's in nurse's training. And the grandson, it will be a senior in high school next year.
And you have 2 sisters.
2 sisters, Martha, who taught school here for 30-something years, and my younger sister's Ann. She lives in Hendersonville.
You've lived in Saluda most of your life, so is there any event that stands out in your memory that's happened in Saluda?
When I was riding bicycles, I guess that's 13 or 14, a plane crashed up here on the mountain, and we all went up there to see it. Had to hike through the woods to find it, and it was mostly in one piece. I mean, it never did burn, but everybody in it was killed. There was, I think, 8 or 10 crew members and a hitchhiking sailor. It was a military plane, and that was about the biggest thing, I think, when I was a kid. I remember big plane crash, except for the one in Hendersonville where the transport got hit with a small plane and both of them went down.
That was in the 60s, wasn't it?
That was in the 60s.
66,
Yeah. I saw the thing. I saw the smoke coming down. Never did see it crash, but I saw the thing coming down. I didn't know where it hit, but it was right almost in the median out there where the Holiday Inn is. It's across the interstate, but it was real close to it.
It's almost over the interstate.
Well, that's,
JB was coming down the interstate.
the stewardess,
Followed.
the stewardess was in the median.
I have a question about the I-26. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember what life was like around here prior to I-26. What are your impressions about the way things were prior to that highway being there? I mean, one of the memories that I have is how quiet it was at my grandparents' farm, which now sits on top of the hill right there at the highway, which is sad. But what are your memories prior to the highway, and how do you think the highway might have changed?
Well, it didn't seem to make a lot of difference to me until I started driving and getting out on the highway. When you're just a kid, you don't hardly, until you drive, you don't really notice much traffic stuff. But once you start driving, coming up that old road now, there wasn't any passing lanes on it. It was just 2 lane. And all the trucks coming from Georgia, South Carolina, all of them use that road. There's no other way to get up here. And the watermelon and peach trucks used to come, I mean, just creeping up through there. Just, you could walk and catch them. And we'd sometimes get down on the mountain. I won't call any names, but sort of hide behind the fence until one of them came along and walk up behind it and sort of take a few peaches off or maybe a watermelon.
We've heard that one before, haven't we?
But once the interstate came out, all that ended. It wasn't any more of that. But I remember when they first were building that interstate, it took so long because the grading was really steep, and I don't know if they really figured all that out when they started, but every time it rained, half that road slide off, and all those nice farms down in the Trine area in the valley would have 6-8 inches of mud standing in them, and a bunch of those people got an injunction against the state and had them stop construction until they figured out how to stop all that slide. And there was a joke around town back then, what's going to be first, a man on the moon or I-26? Well, actually, the man on the moon did come first, and then they finally got that thing open.
But things were very different in town when there was no I-26, because you had, how many service stations do you remember there being in town at one time?
It was 3 on Main Street, the SO station at the end, and the Pace Brothers had the Shell station right in where it is now, and the Gulf station right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another one down across Mill Depot.
That's
So,
the
sure.
Lesso station.
Yeah.
And then the one across the bridge.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, that one too.
Was that 5?
Mm-hmm.
So they were all open at the same time?
Oh, yeah.
5 service
Yeah.
stations in Saluda. And there was actually a stoplight at one time, wasn't there?
Yeah, it really was more of a caution. It actually blinked red on Main Street and caution on. It should have been the other way around, but it wasn't. So if you didn't actually stop, they could give you a ticket, and sometimes they did, depending on if they needed money, I guess, that day. But they just wave you over and give you a ticket.
And that was where the caution light is now?
Right across where the railroad track
Oh,
is,
the railroad track?
right there.
Okay.
I don't think there is a light there now, is there?
Do you remember when they was building the bridge, new bridge?
Yeah.
We had a traffic light on both ends.
I remember the old bridge, before they did that. You mentioned earlier the train used to stop here, and it would block traffic. You couldn't get across here unless you turned and went up there and came around. So we had a police chief, I think it was Morris.
Fred Marshall.
Fred, that he gave the conductor a ticket for, you're supposed to break the train if you're going to block a street for over, I don't know what the time was, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was. Well, they never did break the train. They just stopped, and they'd sit there sometime for 45 minutes or an hour until they checked all the brakes and released them or whatever they're going to do when they come up the mountain. And he gave him a ticket. Well, he had a big to do about that. And then they did break it for about a month after that, and then they just quit. So never did work out too good. That's the first time I ever knew a chief of police giving a conductor a ticket on the Southern Railroad.
But they had
Fred Morris.
Like when they was building the concrete bridge, they had one over about where the barbecue is, and then they had one down here where Greenville Street comes in. And the reason they had it down here at Greenville Street was when them trucks come around, they swung out to get off of the bridge. So they stopped traffic 2 ways then.
Yeah, the bridge.
Temporarily.
The bridge was more at a right angle than it is now. It had really sharp turns.
And it was wooden.
Yes, wood, and it wasn't really wide, and we'd always have 2 or 3 times a year somebody coming this way would be coming too fast and hit that telephone pole up by the church, by the library parking lot. One right up here on the corner. It's always had
I bet you
dents
could
in
hear
it.
those because we
Yeah.
did that.
Well, a question about this bridge, since that's the topic. We always heard, or in some of the research that I'm doing now, the first Joseph Stephenson that came to Saluda came up here to build this bridge, which there was a Joseph Hode Stephenson that was married to Minnie Geis. Did you ever hear any stories about the
No,
Stephenson
I
family?
I heard of many guys, but I don't
You don't
remember anything.
any stories about that? Because he was a bridge builder and came here from Virginia to build this bridge.
He was with the bridge crew, wasn't he?
And then he met Minnie Geis and married her. I haven't found anybody that can confirm that for sure yet.
You've seen a lot of changes in your lifetime in Saluda. What do you think about these changes today?
Most all the buildings seem about the same. Main Street hadn't hardly changed it at all, and they don't run trains anymore. But changes, you got to have change. You can't keep everything like it was 100 years ago. That's what they're trying to do in the Middle East over there, and it just doesn't work. You got to progress. But some of them are good, and some of them are not so good. I sort of like it the way it is. I know you got to have some change, but usually the reason people come here is they like what they see. But it seemed like some of them, as soon as they get here, want to change it like it was where they came from. Why didn't they just stay there? You know, if they want to convert it into Miami Beach or someplace else.
I think most people, 99% of the people who come here are very nice and very sociable. But every once in a while, people come here that want to change.
Yeah.
So it's a small town. It's still a small town. You know most of your neighbors now. You don't know all of them anymore. But it's still a good place to be.
Yeah, it is. Most all small towns are that way because they are small, and you know every street in town and where it goes and what's on it, and you don't always know that in a bigger city, and you know the people too.
What do you think? You mentioned that the buildings downtown are mostly the same, but there are different attendants in the building.
Oh yeah, different owners, different shops in them.
It's not like it used to be because we had how many grocery stores at one time? We had
At least 3 had Saunders and Thompson Store and Pace's down the street, and then Bill Pace, old A&G store also. That's what 4 right here.
And you remember John Gordon when he had one down
Yeah,
there?
but Saunders had it before Gordon did.
Yeah.
And then Gordon took over from Saunder.
What about W.C. Robertson's store? Was that?
Where is that?
It was where City Hall is. Do you remember? That might have been before.
That was before me, but I do remember my dad saying something about a store there in that building.
W.C. Robertson was.
But I don't remember the name of it. But there was something in that building.
Yeah, because we've got a picture of
And that store was Coates. Your
I think,
grandfather was in that store. I've got a picture.
I think so.
W.C. Robinson, and it was Coates and Robinson, and there's a picture of W.C. Robinson and Clarence Pace standing out on the corner.
My dad had some kind of store down there, but I never, that was before my time, and I don't even remember the name of the thing or what even they sold in it. But I think he sold that store when World War I came along because he was going to join, and he was too short to get in, so he didn't get in service and didn't have a store after that either.
From what I've seen in pictures, I gather that your father was a character, just one of our dear Saluda characters, and he was very involved in the community.
He's mayor for 3 terms.
Mayor for 3 terms. He was in the Lions Club, right?
Lions Club and.
Was he Lions Club president at the time?
Yes.
And what else? Is there anything else you'd like to share? There's a picture of him that I love. He's sitting in, and I think we got it from your sister. He's sitting in this like old Model T like car, rear back, with his hat kind of cocked on his head. Have you seen that? Just like he's something else.
Right beside City Hall.
Yeah, that's a
And
cute
then-
picture.
I've got a picture, or seen a picture somewhere of him in a top hat.
Yeah, I have that too. I don't know. I think that was for the first year they had the 100 year
Yeah, it's probably what.
back in the 50s.
100-year celebration.
100 years, yeah.
Of
First
the
one,
county.
first one they had here. I think they had that done for that.
And I'm sure you can remember when he worked up where the police station is now, where he sold TVs,
Bill-
radios,
Bill-
hardware.
Yeah. Bill Pace had that, was his store, and Daddy did that. As a matter of fact, that's the first TVs in Saluda. Everybody used to go down there at night, in the evening, and watch TV, especially when the fights were on.
And that, he sold the first TV in Saluda.
Hmm.
But,
Have you been involved in politics at all?
Never.
Don't want to, do you?
No.
Okay.
but your dad was.
Yeah, he was.
Did he
Not
serve?
me.
Did he do anything other than run for
He was
mayor?
he was in the state legislature back in the 20s,
Oh, okay.
but North Carolina state. But that's way before my time. That was even before he was married.
Now, going back to your childhood, I used to hear stories about you all jumping off train trestles. Is that true? To swing of like jumping off?
Oh yeah,
Is that like something?
like something. Yeah, everybody did that.
That was pretty common. Is that the?
Yeah.
I guess there's only one. Is there only one train trestle at? Like,
Yeah.
So that's the one y'all.
Well, there's a couple of trestles, but that's the only one crosses the water.
The water.
The other one crosses the land, which
You
is.
didn't jump off that one.
Oh no, that one. We used to ride bicycles across it though, which is sort of really dumb because it had rocks on it, just like all the tracks do. I don't know why it had rocks up there on concrete, but they did. Those big rocks, and there's not that much room between the end of the cross tie and the edge, about that much, maybe 3 feet, with them rocks all over it.
And y'all rode your bikes.
Yeah, and if you turned over, I mean, it was like 200 feet.
Anybody ever turn over?
No, not that I know of. Why we didn't just push them across,
You were
the way to ride them across.
Well, from what I understand, because you grew up with my father and my aunt, that you all had a pretty good time growing up around here.
Oh, yeah.
Rode a lot of I've got pictures of my dad on his bicycle, and I know that Aunt Lou had a bicycle, and y'all used to ride all over the place. Pretty much had a lot of freedom, didn't you?
There wasn't that many cars, and of course, none of the kids had a car back then. Everybody had a bicycle if you wanted to go somewhere, and where they lived out there, where the farm is, that's a pretty long walk. So you sort of had to have something to ride.
That's better than walking, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was. You rode everywhere.
They're faster.
Now, also too, from what I heard my dad say, and we've heard in these interviews, is that everybody had their own milk, had at least one milk cow. Did you all have a milk cow growing up?
No, we had chickens, but we never did have a cow. But there was at least 2 over there. The C's had one, and your grandparents had one.
Over when they lived on Gaffney, they
Mhm.
had one? Because that was actually the other family stories about chickens and Aunt Lou used to tell a story about killing a rooster when she was 4 years old with a golf club. I don't know if you remember that, hearing that story, but it flogged her, and so she went inside and got a golf club, came back out and killed it, and my grandfather got really upset with her. But she wasn't gonna let it flog her anymore. But it sounded like back then a lot of people had like little mini farms around their homes, and unlike today. I don't know. I guess some people still do that around town.
We had a garden, small garden, and I thought one time when I got grown, I'd have a small one about half the size of this room, and if it's any bigger, it'd been a full-time job. I mean, it was just hoeing every day. I'm sure glad I wasn't a farmer, because that's a lot of hard work.
You have a garden now?
We got 2 or 3 flower pots with some tomatoes growing in them, and
Sounds like mine.
that's it.
Container garden.
I've got that. That's what I have.
Container garden.
Well, let me ask you some questions about the black community. There's a real interest in the black community right now because St. Matthew's Church has reopened. And it is, they're going to have like community events up there and that kind of thing. And so a lot of people are asking me questions about the black community. What are your memories of St. Matthew's Church? Earlier, before we were on camera, you remembered St. Matthew's Church being in operation way back, back when you were a child?
I remember where it was. There was 2 churches up there. I didn't know the name of it.
Up on Irving Street?
Mm-hmm. It was 2. You remember that? There was two buildings up there. But when I was a kid growing up here, there wasn't more than 6 or 7 black families in the whole town. The most famous one was probably Phoebe Sullivan, who had all these herbs she would conjure up and cure all these ills, and even put the hex on people with them. And she had a big birthday once a year this was on Mother's Day, wasn't it? And of her birthday, and I don't know if it was her birthday or not, but that's the day she celebrated. And there would be 5 or 6 busloads of people coming in here from Washington and Baltimore and all up that way, just for that. And for her birthday.
And they come on the train in cars.
Yeah, I mean, it had a big to-do over at her house, and in the church too.
Did you ever go visit?
Yeah, I went. Yeah, we used to go to that. That's the biggest thing happened around here on that day. That's the only thing happening, and all these buses. They'd park all the way up this street. I mean, from the railroad track all the way up. There's that many of them.
And that was around what years? She died in 1956, so this was all...
It was before that. It was when before I was in high school, I remember, which would have been the late 40s.
30s, 40s.
Yeah.
So, what I've heard is they had a table of food for the whites and a table of food for the blacks.
I just remember one big long table. I mean, 2 or 3 of them put together, and everybody just ate. Sort of like a buffet. You went through and picked out stuff.
Well, you weren't one of the kids that Phoebe got to go out and round up some of her ingredients for her potions, were you?
No. As far as I knew, that's all secret. I don't know anybody knew what she even put in them.
Well, what I heard is that she'd send out one boy to get this, or or people, or individuals to go out and gather. She didn't want them to gather, like one person to gather any number of ingredients. She
One
didn't want
thing.
them.
And
Yeah,
bring it to
yeah.
her.
I don't know if she'd trust anybody to know what she was putting in all that stuff.
And the formula, they said, died with her. She never.
Yeah, she never-
Formula.
Let's pause just 1 minute. Let me. Okay, we're back on. So we were talking about the Green River. You enjoyed camping. Did you ever see the Devil's Footprint?
No, I know where it is. There's 2 of them, one down in the cove and one on Sugarloaf Mountain. I've never seen either one of them, but I've heard about both of them.
Horace Pace tried to tell us exactly where it was. And so we have that on film. He said it's so overgrown now, you couldn't get in there if you tried, just about so overgrown today. But I used to hear stories about, those stories about the railroad tracks. Did you ever hear anything about anything like that?
Only the train crashes that happened down at the safety track. One had a carload of cattle on it.
The Slaughter Hill, that's Slaughter.
But that's before my time too, but I always heard about it.
Oh, okay.
Used to, they had a fella sitting down there that the train would blow its whistle when it got so far down the track. And it'd either blow once or twice, and once was okay or twice was okay and the other one wasn't. And if it got the right signal, he'd go out there and switch the track open to go down the mountain, but it always stayed locked going up the safety track in case the train couldn't slow down enough. But if it was going too fast, it'd go up the safety track. But they never had any wrecks as far as I know after they started that. They had one at the foot of the mountain too, but I don't know if they ever used that one.
And
Down Melrose.
riding your bicycle, I bet you walked a lot.
Well, not when I could ride the bicycle, but oh yeah, we had to walk.
A lot of people walked all over town.
If you didn't have a car, you walked.
How did you all feel about the summer people?
We liked them. It was the same group. It usually came every summer. A lot of the older people had homes here, and they had kids, and they'd bring them, and they stayed all summer, and we got to know all of them. And they'd come back every year. But they don't seem to do that anymore. I'm not on the street enough to know, but I don't see that many kids here, summer kids.
And the rumor was that the boys were always looking for the summer people to come back because the girls came with them.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was worked both ways. The Saluda girls probably looking at those summer boys too.
I think there was more summer girls that came than I remember any males. I don't know why that was, but they
Just
always,
worked out that way.
yeah. And then they had a baby hospital up here. It was still running in the 50s, and had a lot of girls that worked there that came from other places than here. Some of them were from here, but most of them weren't. From Mill Springs or Tryon or even far away as Landrum, next state, working up there. And they'd have 8 or 10 up there.
And then you had was it summertime when they had the seminary up there?
Seminars.
Seminars.
Remember them?
Yeah, all the doctors come, yeah,
They would be here for what, about a week or so?
about a week.
Some of them would be 2 weeks long.
And they had a square dance farm every year they were here. And I remember one doctor, I don't remember his name, but every time he would take a drink, he'd roll his pants leg up. And by the time I danced over, they'd be up to his knee. I remember that.
Where did they have those dances? Did they have them up on Smith Hill?
No, they had them over here at the gymnasium.
Cool. Okay, so they joined you all. Is that what they were doing? They were joining your dance?
Yes, it was, yeah, same. But I don't know if it's the same night or just combined the nights or at a separate night, but I mean, all the doctors came. The dance was mainly for them the week they were here.
Could they dance?
Some of them could, most of them were from South Carolina. They weren't from, a lot of them weren't from anywhere around here that I ever knew.
Okay.
And looking over some of those seminar books, they were from all over the United States, and even some from Canada.
Yeah. A lot of them.
A lot of good memories of Saluda and a few bad ones.
Yeah, I don't know where they all stayed, but there was certainly a lot of doctors here that week.
A lot going on during the summer.
Yeah.
Well,
What, do you have anything you want to share, any special memories or any stories that you'd like to share?
I don't know of any.
Well, you told me earlier that you stayed away after you went off to college, and I guess when you went into you said the Navy, right? That you came back, what, 10 years later?
I left after school in 1953 and came back November 1963.
Why did you come back?
I had gotten a job with an insurance company in Hendersonville, and I was living in Greensboro at the time. I was looking for some way to get back up here, and I interviewed Allstate Insurance in Greensboro and asked them if they had an opening in Asheville. And they said no, but they had one in Hendersonville. Well, I couldn't believe that.
Why did you want to come back here?
This is where I grew up, and it's
Family.
family, and it's what you remember when you're small. And I had enough to big cities. I mean, Greensboro isn't all that big, but it's a whole lot bigger than this.
Did you figure out there was no other place like it?
Yes, didn't take too long.
When did your parents pass away?
My mother died in 1987, 2 months before my son got killed. And my dad, he died 10 years earlier than that, 77, I believe.
Well, these memories mean a lot, and these will be preserved for the future. And we appreciate you coming and sharing with us.
Well, I'm glad to do it.
So